Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody introduced me, but so I have to introduce myself. My name is Venkataram. I work for British Standards Institution, that's BSI. I won't tell you much more about myself or BSI, but I have a very short period of time. I'm going to tell you something from what Ray left you with in terms of standards. I just took over. All right. So what I'm going to share with you is something very basic. We all know this, but there's something which is fundamentally different. What we do today and what we forgot is what I'm going to bring back onto the table. When we talk about standards, not too long ago, this used to be the case of railways. Obviously, as you can see here on this particular track, this train cannot pass because the tracks changed. This is a picture I have taken during one of our international meetings, quite common. Those are sockets and plugs lying around on the floor. And you can see that from different people with different parts of the world have different sockets and different plugs to fit their home sockets, but when they come to international meetings, this is what it looks like. That's lack of standardization. When you don't have standards, this is what's going to result. And then look at the other story. We all use credit cards, we use debit cards, and no matter where in the world you swipe the card reader can actually capture all the information which is in use. And that has happened because that industry took to standards much ahead of before it became a chaotic thing, which every bank, every card issuer is going to have their own standards. And that's the success story. So that's the importance of standards. And we learned it. In the mid-50s, people like Deming and many others, they started to look at processes which create end results. And what they started to find out was that if you really want to have consistent production, whether it's a service or a product, you need to concentrate on the process. And if you get the process right, and you do it consistently, you'll get a consistent product, and you therefore can be highly competitive. So this is another evolution which took place. Now let's have a look at the standards world, how the standards world has actually evolved. Probably you wouldn't have even imagined what's happening in the standards world. But first generation standards were basically the product standards, or they were specifications for materials, dimensions. Those were the standards. Organizations competed using those standards, but in those days it would be mostly inspection and meeting the requirement. Of course, then the process standards started to emerge, and that's the second generation of standards that we started to see emerge, and that's the beginning of the systems, the management systems, the so-called management systems, which sometimes we do not really support so thoroughly in organizations. That's the ISO 9000, the ISO 14000, the ISO 27001, and so on. That's the second generation of standards. But what's evolving nowadays is the third generation, which is much more important. These are behavioral standards. Now, why do we need behavioral standards? Because we have a component of people. Our people are highly illogical, irrational, and when they start to behave like that in organizations with their own mind, there's a lot of variability. So we will talk about behavioral standards. Some of the behavioral standards that we start to see emerging are very much relevant to your industry as well, and I'll speak to you about that in a while. What have standards done to this country? By and large, Indians are highly disciplined, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we can be pretty much diverse in that. But what does it do when we are working for organizations and when you need process consistency? The problem then comes up that we do things in different ways. And that's really a problem. But let me talk to you about what happened in India. In 1991, India became a liberalized economy, and before that, in a closed economy, we had very shoddy production. The manufacturing was absolutely horrendous. There were so many controls on manufacturing, capacity, licenses, and so on. So the customer was never given a choice. When the liberalization process started off, what happened was that India fortunately started to experiment at a time with the standard ISO 9000. The series of standards at that time, 9001, 2, and 3. And I can tell you that's been one of the reasons why Indian companies could start to run their businesses pretty much efficiently, pretty much effectively. Let me tell you the story about what's happened in the automotive industry. You remember the ambassadors in the Fiat? You don't get them anymore. But when you talk about the quality of an ambassador in a Fiat, there was a lot to be desired. You had to wait 3 years before you could even get one of these cars. And if you're fortunate to get a car in those years, so what if the car was making a bit of noise, or the fitments are not exactly perfect, the paint is not really absolutely good. You get a car, you got 4 wheels, you got an engine, you got a horn as well. What is a car? A car is built by an OEM who's just got a shed, a set of spanners, and a set of screwdrivers. So they get the components from a supply chain. And if that supply chain produces lousy components, you get a lousy car. Simple. Now what has happened in that supply chain, and I can tell you, take it back, paint the picture for you. I used to be going around some of these companies in the Faridabad, Gurgaon area, supplying to the automotive industry. And those workshops used to be, when you walk in, it's a lot of confusion. And you have the machines, you can't tell what color they are because they're full of grime and grease and dirt on it. So it's all black. The floors are completely caked with metal turnings and dirt, cobbled up. The materials used to lie on the floor. Nobody really knew which was reject material or which is good material and what stages they are in. The lighting was poor, dingy, fumes all around. In general, pretty much a chaotic environment. But something's changed. If you go to the very same factory today, the same workshop, at any point in the day or the night, you'll find the floors are epoxy painted. You find all the materials are in bins. You know which is rejected. You also can see the color of the machines. It's spotless, absolutely spick and span. And the lighting is fresh. The air is fresh. So what happens is that the production, the quality which is produced in those factories is very much different. How did it happen? Was it that the owner, he got up one morning and he decided to do that? No, he didn't. It started with Maruti, and they said, we want you to have ISO 9000 and do it correctly. So the companies were forced to start ISO 9000, the first baby steps. Then they went into QS 9000, an automotive standard. Then they went to ISO TS 16929. The bar was being raised continuously, including in the auditing, including the auditors, and so on. So what's happened is that industry transformed itself in a very small span of time of 10 to 12 years. From being an absolutely lousy industry to a global quality industry. 15 years ago, or 16, 17 years ago, India was very proud. We got the first ever order for our very high-tech component to be exported to none other than General Motors in the US. And it was all the newspapers and magazines and stories and how they achieved it and so on. And you will wonder, what's that high-tech component which we exported? It was a radiator cap. Today, hundreds of manufacturers export hundreds of thousands of components every day, and they get fitted into the best cars and the best automobiles across the world. That transformation happened only because those companies started to use standards in the right way. You must also appreciate the difference between standards like this one. Do you recognize this one? That's a speed limit. Is that a standard? It is. It's a regulation. Yep. Now, you must understand that around the world, we have learned that when you try to regulate something through a standard, organizations tend to find millions of ways of how to do that. So these days we see standards are not regulated, they are voluntary. So most of the standards that you start to see are voluntary. It's up to you to choose them. It's up to you to implement them. And if you do implement those standards, you will find a benefit coming to your organization. Standards, we create standards. British standards, we were the pioneers in creating standards. They started in 1902. And we make about 2,500 standards each year. Not all of them are British standards. So a lot of them are actually European standards, EN standards. Standards are nothing but knowledge. And how do you get that knowledge? The knowledge is not with PSI. We don't possess the knowledge. We know how to make the standard. We know how to publish the standard. How to get it correctly. The knowledge comes from the industry. We don't wake up one morning and say we need another standard. It's the industry which tells us we need a standard. Can you help us? And then we go and create new standards. So standards collect the best practices and knowledge from the industry and put it into a simple document which is available widely, and that can be used by anybody anywhere in the world to their advantage. That's the advantage of standards. That's why you start to see the standards. There's a huge amount of increase in standards. I will not get into the details of the risks in the supply chain. I'm sure the speakers ahead of me must have been ringing the alarm bells of the risks in the supply chain, etc. But once we know that there are risks, they must be proactively attended before they create a loss. And of course, the extended supply chains have increased the risk multifold across the world. And of course, what we should be looking at is a little bit different than just pure risk management or any of these things. And what we start to speak about is another standard, which as I speak is a very, very new standard. I'm sure that most of you haven't even heard of the standard yet, but this is a standard called resilience. This term resilience is starting to make, you hear this more often these days than ever. And there's a good reason for this. Most companies now think about long term and not just the short term. And the term resilience is rather more complex than just a term loosely used. And therefore the standard was created. This is a BS 65000. I'm just going to explain that to you because it actually builds around just pure common sense. We're familiar with the product and process and people involved in any of the processes that we have. And of course in the supply chain, that's also very much true. And then we look at the operational resilience. The operation is how you run the processes, how you do the daily jobs. We must also very strongly look at the supply chain, because the supply chain now becomes more critical to all businesses across the world. And of course the information resilience, because information, we use digital information much more than ever before, and therefore information resilience starts to make a large amount of sense today. An organization to be really resilient should be robust, must be strong. Good foundations, good systems, good people. You must also have the adaptive capacity. And as Charles Darwin said, it's not the strongest species which will survive, it is the most adaptive to change that will survive. And that is exactly true for any new business in today's world. And a company has to be agile. It must be quick to respond to changes. Changes in the market, changes in the competitive environment, changes in the technology. All of this. Just imagine, I mean, we all see over the last week the introduction by Reliance of Jio. Now that's a significant change in the way telecom operators in this country were operating. And now look at the companies like Airtel and Vodafone and Idea and so on. What about their businesses? Wouldn't they want to be resilient? Wouldn't they? Now they have to be adaptive. They have to be quickly adaptive. It's not just reducing the pricing. They have to start to think about what the customer wants. Will we be able to give it to them? Not just by dumping price. That's never been argued. So organizations which think about organizational resilience would have proactively thought about the problems which are created by such kind of game changers, and they respond to that rather quickly. Those are the kind of things which run around the organizational resilience. But I will not get into the details of that due to lack of time. But what I will actually focus your attention is, on top of your iceberg is what we do on a daily basis. Now we have clever strategies, we have visions, we have mission statements and leadership and all of those things, financial controls, all these are hidden factors. That's the tip of the iceberg. So what lies beneath the iceberg is what we need to be thinking about. And that's the behavior. And that comes into the people. The culture and the behaviors. Most organizations have values, but living those values, most organizations don't define them. Only when they define the values and they define how the values are achieved through behaviors, through attitudes, through perceptions and feelings, then you will start to build a culture which will actually make an organization resilient. There's so many examples that I can share with you. I have 15 minutes and I'm just about to complete. So coming back to standards, there is a plethora of standards, and we're familiar with the ISO 9000, the ISO 14000 environment, the OSHA 16001. We're familiar with the supply chain standards of 28000, the information security, the business continuity standard. They're directly related with supply chains. It's directly related with most of the industries sitting in this room. Also things like the energy management, the ISO 50001, the carbon and LEED certification for warehousing and so on. And then of course we have the behavioral standards which are emerging, the anti-bribery standard, which is BS 10500. Road traffic safety, very important for the supply chain, especially in countries like India. The ISO 39001. And very importantly, what we start to see another standard which is there is the BS 11000, which is on collaborative partnerships. And of course, we have the industry standards, such as the CPAT, we have the TAPA standards. I'm sure the speakers before me must have been discussing more in detail about the TAPA standards, so I don't get into those details. The last thing is about what have standards done. Standards actually accelerate innovation. They help businesses to innovate. Those who help build standards get a competitive advantage. Just imagine the credit card industry. They build a standard, they create an advantage. They help the entire industry to succeed. Now just imagine in India, we have trucks which have got different heights. We got they're not standardized. We got pallet systems which are not standardized, moving things from one to another. It's chaotic. I'm sure some of you might have that experience. But what if the industry had actually standardized those things? How much of help that would have done to the industry and its growth and the competitive advantage, plus the cost advantages. Standards structure and lubricate markets. and the market will grow quickly and more collaborative. And of course, standards help organization through repeatable organizational performance. Finally, about certification.